Welcome back. I hope you're doing great. As a part of this video, we'll understand what is entity integrity constraint. By the way, what is entity integrity? Entity integrity ensures that there are no duplicate records within the table. And also it ensures that field that identifies each record within the table is unique and also not null. So how does the entity integrity ensures that there are no duplicate records within the table? By using a primary key. In a way, entity integrity refers to the process of enforcing a primary key for each table where the key must be either a row or a combination of rows that are unique and non-null values. But why do we need entity integrity? Before we get into that, if I ask you a question, why do we store the data in tables? Of course, for analysis. We retrieve the data in tables and subject that for analysis. Let's take an example here. This particular table has column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. Here, if I want to get an average of the marks between the science and social studies of each of the student, what do? I'll say David, then 70 plus 45 by 2 and whatever I get. Are you noticing something here? We have two Rahuls. One Rahul which has scored 67 in science, 73 in social studies, and we have another Rahul. So what did we say? We wanted to analyze from this particular data, right? Then there is an issue here. That is where primary key will come into picture, which is enforced by a entity integrity. So what we will do is, for the same table, we will introduce a primary key which is enforced by a entity integrity, and that takes care of the uniqueness of each record and will would be able to analyze the data properly. So entity integrity is enforced by a primary key constraint. What does the primary key constraint tell us? Value of an attribute of a primary key can't be null. Whenever you have a table, assuming this is a primary key, value of this particular column cannot be null. We cannot have a null value as a part of the primary key. And also it says we should have a distinct values. If you see here, we have a distinct values 1001, 1002, 1003. So primary key constraint enforces that the value should not be null and also there should not be duplicates, right? So as we discussed, it will not allow the null values. Okay, but on the other hand, other columns which are not designated as a primary key, they can have a null values, because that will not have any impact of identify a particular record uniquely. That is the reason any key other than the primary key can have a null values. Let us take an example here. As I said, entity integrity is enforced by a primary key. So we'll see how do we create a table now with a primary key. Here we are creating a table, student primary key. Couple of attributes are ID, student name and age. In this, we are making the ID as a primary key. As I said, the moment you say ID as a primary key, it will not allow null values and it will not allow duplicate values. So here, if you try to insert this particular record, it will get inserted properly, but this record will not be inserted successfully. We understood that entity integrity is enforced by a primary key, but the question is, will we always have one column which can act as a primary key? Not always. Let us take this example here. See, you have a student name. This also can be duplicate. We have another column. So in that case, what we can do is we can go and combine this column with this column or whichever the appropriate column to make a composite primary key. So if you want to make the primary key out of the natural columns only, we can combine those columns and make a composite primary key. since composite primary key, constraint also is there, which refers to the cases where we can have more than one column to be used to specify a primary key. Let us take an example here. In this case, we are creating a table called student composite primary key, that is CPK. We have a couple of attributes here: student name, student class, parent contact number, and student age. In this case, as we already discussed, any one of the column will not qualify as a primary key. So we are trying to create a composite key and make that as a primary key, which is a combination of student name and parent contact number. The moment we make this as a primary key and have a constraint associated with that, in that case, let us see what values can be inserted, what cannot be inserted. We can go ahead and insert this particular value because everything is fine here. So student name, student class, parent contact number, and student age, everything is fair, then it will get inserted. In this case also gets inserted because null doesn't mean there is no data here. So if you want to say null, we have to represent it like this. In this case, it will allow. Only in few cases like this where we are specifying it as a null, it will not allow us to insert the data. Let us see the hands-on of a entity integrity through primary key and composite primary key in the next video. Thank you.